Good morning and Happy New Year, everyone. Thank you for that very kind introduction. And Mr. Wong, thank you for your leadership and your advocacy for toy safety. Well, the tradition continues. This is the second time I have begun the new year with a speech in Hong Kong about toy safety. I wish I could have been here a few days ago, as the New Year's Eve fireworks display over Victoria Harbor looked just wonderful. I've traveled here to be at your toy fair for two reasons. First, I want to share with you the progress I see being made in Asia and the United States to make toys safer. And second, I want to share my expectations of the toy industry in the years ahead. I'm pleased to report that the state of toy safety is strong. It's strong thanks to, in large part, to the actions of many of you in this room today. 2011 represented the third consecutive year that toy recalls in the United States have declined. I applaud all the manufacturers, the suppliers, the importers, the labs that comply with the CPSC's requirements and did their part to put safer toys in the hands of America's children. In fiscal year 2011, there were 34 toy recalls, mostly related to choking and laceration hazards to young children. The 34 recalls last year represented a drop in the number of recalls from 46 in 2010 to 50 in 2009 and 172 in 2008, a year we must never repeat. Overall, the toy industry has made great progress in recent years. Quality assurance and quality control systems and adherence to U.S. safety standards have improved. But you cannot let your guard down because the customers in America, your largest trading market, have high expectations that toys coming into the country will be compliant with the CPSC's toy safety rules. And I have the same expectations. So that we can all make 2012 the single best year in toy safety, I want to focus on three areas during my time with you this morning. First, I will give you an update on all the latest developments with the Consumer Product Safety Improvement Act. Second, I will discuss the concept of safety by design. And finally, I will talk about the CPSC's renewed effort to be a regulator that favors prevention and education over reaction and recall. So let's start with the discussion of the Consumer Product Safety Improvement Act, or the CPSIA. I trust that everyone knows by now that this sweeping U.S. child safety law established some of the lowest lead limits in paint and lead content limits in the world for children and toys. Paint is set at 90 parts per million of lead, and total lead content is set at 100 parts per million. The drop down to 100 parts per million for lead content became effective prospectively on August 14, 2011. The law also bans toys from being made or sold with more than 1,000 parts per million of 6 different phthalates. There is an expert panel of scientists who are still researching 3 of the 6 banned phthalates, as well as the safety of chemical alternatives. I also hope that you are aware that the CPSIA turned the long-standing and well-known voluntary toy standard, ASTM F963, into a mandatory federal toy standard. Except for the drop to 100 parts per million lead limit for total content, all the requirements that I cited have been in place for more than 2 years. I support these rules because they are paying off. The payoff is seen in increased consumer confidence and increased efforts by your industry to move away from harmful metals and chemicals. Now, here is the big news that everyone must know. On January 1st, just 10 days ago, the CPSC lifted the 2-year-old stays of enforcement for testing and certification requirements for lead contents, phthalates, and ASTM F963. The headline from the CPSC is that independent third-party testing is now required and in effect for these important toy safety rules. I recognize that some of you may be unfazed by this news. That's because many U.S. manufacturers and retailers have required you to adhere to and test to these rules, even with the stays of enforcement in place. Yet everyone should understand that with the stays lifted, imported toys may not reach their intended destination if they are not accompanied with a certificate of compliance. This certificate is the golden ticket that the CPSC port inspectors, importers, and retailers are looking for to ensure that toys you make over here can reach the hands of children in America. I applaud those of you at this fair that do first-party performance testing. But the law in the United States calls for a representative sample of toys to be third-party tested as well. If you need to know which laboratories in this region are accredited to test these requirements, log on to cpsc.gov, where there is an easy-to-use, searchable list of laboratories. The other new development that I'm pleased to share with all of you is that ASTM F963 Subcommittee recently approved and published the 2011 version of their standard. Under the CPSIA, my fellow commissioners and I can accept this new version of the voluntary standards and turn it into the updated mandatory standard. This revised standard is a net positive for the industry and the safety of children. It should not be a cause for confusion within the industry. Once the CPSC accepts the new version of the standard, we will issue new notices of requirements, which will provide all of you with guidance on how to test to the new or upgraded requirements. I will let Dwayne Ray, CPSC's outstanding Director of Hazard Identification and Reduction, talk to you about many of the specifics of the new standards during his presentation. Though one of the new upgrades that is especially noteworthy are the limits on cadmium and other toxic metals in both surface coatings as well as substrates. For the past 2 years, I have been warning manufacturers in this region about substituting cadmium or other toxic metals in place of lead. We now have standards for both toys and children's metal jewelry, reinforcing my warning to manufacturers about the hazards of cadmium and other toxic metals. To me, that is forward progress. Knowing the specific standards and testing requirements to deal with various hazards is very important because standards and testing are the foundation of the CPSIA. What my commission colleagues and I did last October was to fortify that foundation, and we fortified it for years and years to come. In October, we approved a rule requiring continuous third-party testing for all toys and children's products. It was a monumental vote and one that parents and grandparents in the United States have waited years to happen. The third-party testing requirement is the crowning achievement of the CPSC's work on the CPSIA. The rule furthers CPSC's efforts to create a stronger safety framework, a framework designed to ensure that the safety of toys and children's products before they get into the hands of children, no matter where they are. So let's say after you begin making a new toy, there's a material change introduced during the manufacturing process. Maybe you change your paint supplier or plastic supplier. Should the children who ends up playing with the toy manufactured after the material change have to serve as an unwitting tester to whether it has potentially made that toy safer or unsafer? I say absolutely not, and I trust all of you would say exactly the same. Well, our continuous testing rule is intending to ensure that there is a high level of assurance that a particular toy complies with all the pertinent safety requirements. And that compliance is maintained during the entire production life of that toy, and any safety issues are discovered before the product goes out the factory door, not after it ends up in a child's hands. This rule goes into effect early next year, but I am confident that all of you are committed to providing children with the highest level of safety in their toys this year. I would be remiss if I did not mention that on the same day that the CPSC approved the continuous testing rule, we also approved the final component part testing rule. I recognize fully that component part testing may not work in every situation, but I hope it will be beneficial to many of you. For the past few years, my fellow commissioners and I have been advocating that the U.S. toy and children's product companies push the responsibility of testing upstream. Well, upstream means Hong Kong. Upstream means Guangzhou. I urge all of you to do everything you can to encourage suppliers of paints, parts, and accessories to do the right thing. and certify that their components meet the U.S. safety requirements. The benefits downstream in the form of reduced costs will be significant. However, safety will not be sacrificed. In case you didn't know, in August 2011, the U.S. Congress approved and President Obama signed into law amendments to certain parts of the CPSIA. Congress did not overhaul the independent testing requirements, nor did it back away from the stringent lead limits in children's products, which many people thought it would do. What Congress did do was establish a pathway for small batch manufacturers to gain some relief from some of the third-party testing requirements. Congress also made sure that the 100 parts per million total lead content limit was applied prospectively only, not retroactively for retailers and resellers. And I fully support this change in the law. Now, I know that the CPSIA has presented certain challenges to the toy industry. Nevertheless, I believe that your motivation to comply with the law should continue to be the same as the CPSC's motivation to implement the law, a desire to keep children safe when playing. Many of the toys on display at this fair are ingenious, and eventually they will appear in retail stores in America. Take the necessary steps now to ensure that those toys comply with the CPSIA so that children are safe and happy when those toys reach their hands. It's not just the law, it's the right thing to do. I would now like to transition from talking about what the rules and requirements are under the CPSIA to talking about ways that toy companies can ensure that they meet our rules and requirements by ensuring that all products are designed safely. In 2008, two researchers from Western Canada published a paper analyzing about 600 toy recalls announced in the United States over a 20-year period of time. Harry Bapuji and Paul Beamish found that, quote, the number of defects attributable to design issues was much higher than those attributable to manufacturing processes, end of quote. In fact, 71% of toy recalls that they analyzed were related to design problems, not to not meeting the rules. Bapuji and Beamish stated that, quote, a design problem is reflected in the sharp edges of a toy, which poses a laceration hazard. Another common design problem is small detachable parts, such as balls and beads, which pose a swallowing and a choking hazard. Another example of design flaws include open tubes and spaces, which can entrap children's body parts, long strings that pose strangulation hazards, and sewn button and glued eyes on stuffed toys, as opposed to buttonless clothing for toys and embroidered eyes. The researchers added, a design problem would result in an unsafe toy irrespective of where it was manufactured, whether it was manufactured in China or the United States. On the other hand, a manufacturing defect arises because of manufacturer's errors or negligence. If a toy's design is good, it does not necessarily mean that the toy produced will be good. By contrast, if the design is poor, the toy manufactured will definitely be faulty. And this is the end of their research. The researchers made two suggestions. First, ensure the accountability of toy companies to improve their product designs, and second, encourage the development of global standards to enhance product safety. We already know that the standards have been enhanced, so the focus needs to be in building safety into the design of your toys. This is especially important for the industry because the offerings of new designs to distributors and your customers change so frequently. And with nearly 90% of all toys imported into the United States coming from China, it is here in Hong Kong and also in mainland China that the final design has to be right every time. Before manufacturing and assembly starts, it is vital that toy companies design out potential health and safety risk in each and every model. Now here are some examples of what I mean. If you are making electronic toys and use button batteries, your design must ensure that children cannot access those batteries. Button batteries in toys and in certain adult products emerged last year as a public health issue in the United States due to the rise in incidents of children swallowing these toxic batteries. There's actually international cooperation aimed at addressing this hazard. The World Health Organization is sponsoring a global health and safety conference later this year, and they're looking for research papers from engineers with ideas to reduce child exposure to button batteries. Hopefully, the ideas generated by the WHO conference can help your industry develop even better designs for electronic toys. Another important design is the metals and chemicals used in your plastics, surface coatings, and substrates. Safety by design means ensuring that your specs are very clear about not including lead, cadmium, antimony, chromium, and other toxic metals. And I am encouraged that the Chinese manufacturers are developing a database of known chemicals. And there cannot be more than 1,000 parts per million of 6 types of phthalates in your plastic, because anything above that level is banned in the United States. Adhering to the ASTM F963 and the CPSIA in your designs is good for business and good for the health and the safety of children. Another key to a safe design is proper age grading of the toys. Parents and grandparents certainly have an obligation to provide age-appropriate toys for young children. But when consumers look at the age grading on that package, it should reflect who the toy is designed for, as well as the best science and age determinations. As I stated earlier, we continue to find small parts violations and choking hazards in toys seized at the import or that are recalled after they make their way into the marketplace. Small balls, small parts, and protruding parts are acute hazards in toys, and those hazards not only lead to recalls, but they also can cause death and hospitalization. As a result, every precaution should be taken to design out these risks. I believe that safety by design can be a winning approach for the toy industry to incorporate. Now, if toy companies around the world can aim for the highest level of safety in their design specifications, while the CPSC and AQSIQ and the other governments keep working to promote best manufacturing practices here in China, we can achieve something great. The entire toy industry can reach a level of superior quality, performance, and customer satisfaction if it embraces safety by design. Now, the third topic I want to discuss this morning is education. With each new year come new parents who need to be educated on making safe purchases and become aware of risk with toys. Informing parents and consumers about buying the right toy for the right age child has been a constant part of the CPSC's work for more than 2 decades. I want to stress, however, that we still have work to do in educating everyone in the industry. Just a few days ago, I was reading a newspaper story in the United States, and it shows that we still have work to do. A writer who was visiting Toy Town in Los Angeles spoke with importers and distributors. The writer approached the owner of a small toy store who was stocking up for the holiday sales and asked how he knew the items he was purchasing were safe. He replied, "I don't know." Yes, he actually said, "I don't know." The store owner then told the reporter that he holds the toy district wholesalers responsible for passing along toys that meet U.S. product standards. So the reporter asked the wholesaler how he knows his toys are safe. He said when the container arrives in the harbor, it gets inspected. If it's not safe, it won't be released to the public. That was his response. Now, these answers concern me. The CPSC needs everyone in the supply chain to understand the new toy safety requirements and be able to communicate them downstream as well as to the public. The CPSC is working very hard to keep the consumer confidence in the safety of toys that are in the marketplace, but we can't do it alone. From manufacturers to importers, from wholesalers to retailers, I want everyone to be aware of and talk about independent third-party testing requirements and the certificate of conformity requirements. I want everyone to know and be able to talk about the lead content and the lead paint limits, cadmium limits, the limits on phthalates, and the mandatory toy standard. You may not agree with all of these safety requirements, but to keep the $20 billion worth of toys flowing from this region into the United States, knowing about these requirements and complying with them is vital. There is also the wholesaler's comment. When the container arrives in the harbor, it gets inspected. When it's not safe, if it's not safe, it won't be released to the public. Well, the CPSC certainly has a stronger presence at the ports than ever before, and we are seeking additional funds to hire more staff to work at these ports. But I don't want consumers to be misled into thinking that we are anywhere close to having the capacity to inspect each shipment of toys that arrives in the U.S. ports. That is the vision we have, but it does not reflect the current reality. The reality is that the responsibility starts with the manufacturers and the exporters, a responsibility not to cut corners when it comes to complying with our new requirements. If you fail to send a new toy through a third-party lab, produce a legitimate certificate, and adhere to ASTM F963, there will be consequences. Your products may be stopped at the ports, rejected by the importer, rejected by the retailer, caught by the CPSC in the market, or potentially recalled at the consumer level. I don't want any of this to happen to you or your company. So that is why I come all the way to Hong Kong in January to be with you today. I'm here to educate, to inform, and empower you to take the necessary steps now to ensure that your products flow through the stream of commerce. But please don't think that this toy fair is the only time that you're going to hear from the CPSC. One of the most important symbols of the CPSC's commitment to year-end education and outreach to the business community in this region is our foreign office that we opened first foreign office that we opened last year in Beijing. It was almost 1 year ago to the day that I was in Beijing to officially open the CPSC's first ever foreign office. It is only natural to open our first foreign office in Beijing given the growth and the importance of Chinese consumer goods in the U.S. markets and our cooperative relationship with AQSIQ and other government counterparts in the region. The Beijing office is fully functioning and it has been busy. In just the past 12 months, our regional product safety officer and our product safety specialists have provided training in U.S. product safety requirements to more than 16,500 industry representatives. 2,500 in person and more than 14,000 via live webcast. I believe this outreach effort has helped manufacturers turn more attention toward best manufacturing practices, which is a principle that I have been promoting. And with us today is Jenny Wong from our Beijing office. So Jenny, we're glad to have you here. Now, our Beijing office is actually part of a larger office that I established at the agency, the Office of Education, Global Outreach, and Small Business Ombudsman. I believe that by establishing an office dedicated to addressing the questions and the concerns of the regulated community, the CPSC can facilitate the transfer of knowledge across industries and regions. This, I am confident, will ultimately create safer toys and safer products through better educated manufacturers. Now, I'm hopeful that our new Office of Education can also collaborate with colleges and universities on special education courses in the United States and in China. In fact, the CPSC is already involved in ongoing conversations with several institutions of higher learning to explore the development of meaningful certification programs related to best manufacturing practices in China. It is my hope that this initiative can result in academia playing a leading role in education and training a future generation of experts on supply chain management. In closing, I would like to emphasize that the three areas I spoke about this morning, the new CPSIA requirements, the concept of safety by design, and educating everyone in the supply chain all have something in common. They all contribute to the CPSC's strategic approach aimed at promoting prevention. We don't want to constantly be reacting in recall. We want to educate and prevent recalls. I believe that prevention must win out over reaction. From manufacturing to distribution, the toy industry and the CPSC should continue to work cooperatively to prevent injuries by getting it right from the start. I predict that the year 2012 will be another successful year in toy safety, especially if everyone rallies around this approach. There will always be some injuries in toys that we cannot prevent, but there are thousands of injuries that we can prevent by designing in safety and designing out defects. Superior designs and fewer manufacturing defects will lead to fewer seizures at the U.S. ports and fewer recalls. I want both of those statistics to decline this year, and it can only happen if all of you step up your attention to safety issues now. I know the industry is up for this challenge, and I know that each of you is up to the challenge because many of your companies already have a mission that is committed to safety, injury prevention, and the well-being of your customers. The issues I raised today are certainly not exclusive to the manufacturers and the suppliers of this region. So 1 month from now, I will be in New York City to make the same points to the largest toy fair in America. From Hong Kong to New York and everywhere in between, I want us to be partners in promoting new toy safety rules and partnerships in preventing toy safety deaths and injuries. As a wave of safe, compliant toys flow into the United States this year, reaching store shelves in American homes, I trust that we can achieve our shared vision. A vision of children happy and safe at play, with smiling parents watching over them. So let's do the work now that is needed to achieve this vision through 2012 and beyond. Thank you all for your time today, and congratulations to the Hong Kong Trade Development Council, the Federation of Hong Kong Industries, the Hong Kong Toy Council, and the Toy Manufacturers Association of Hong Kong for organizing another great toy fair. Thank you.